Haven't posted any videos for a while, so I've decided to start another project. This one's a little bit different. It's not a radio um, or restoring a radio. We're going to build something from scratch here. I recently decided to learn to play the guitar, specifically the electric guitar. I always wanted to do that since I was a young man, and my youngest daughter was kind of interested in it, so we went ahead and bought an electric guitar. Of course, I need an amp for it, and me being a tube guy on a lot of stuff, I thought I'd make my own amp. So I finally settled on a clone for a Fender 5E3, and I've started a little bit of it. First thing I had to do, I gathered all the parts for it. Most of them I already had. A lot of resistors and capacitors, had all the tubes. Had to order a few more things like the audio transformer and power transformer and the speaker, which you'll see later. The other things that I didn't have is I didn't have some of the jacks, so I went ahead and ordered those. Got those all in. First thing I needed to do was create a chassis. And this was my first attempt. Thought I could just bend it over the bench, but as you can see, that didn't come out. It didn't come out very well. This was going to be a one piece where I bent it over. I just really didn't like that. Obviously, I could have probably straightened those out, hammer and dolly, but it would have taken me forever. So, about 20 some years ago, I bought a Harbor Freight bench brake that I never used, because at that time we didn't have YouTube to teach us how to use them. So I went out and used that bench brake and came up with this. It's 3 pieces, and mainly the reason it's 3 pieces is to try to get this to work out really well. I used my laser cutter to make myself some templates, and I'm just learning how to use Inkscape with my laser cutter. This is what I came up with, the first template. These are the score lines. If I had to do this over again, I'd make these gaps a little bit smaller, but I basically had some 20 gauge steel that had been laying around for a long time. In fact, it had been laying around long enough that it has a little rust on it, but we'll take care of that. But we went ahead and used this to bend this part here. Now, the reason I ended up making it 3 parts is my laser cutter, it can actually cut bigger if I use the pass-through feed, but I didn't really want to do that. I haven't used it enough yet to learn how to do that. So this is 14.5 inches. I needed to cut this out as a separate part because the standard bed on the laser cutter isn't wide enough to cut. I think with the sides here it was going to be over 20 inches, and that's the maximum width if I don't use the pass-through. So I made that. Where did I put it? Then I made a template for the ends. There it is. That's the template for the ends. These are just score marks, so I knew where to bend. So I bent those. Then I got to use another piece of equipment that I bought a number of years ago, never used. Bought a Harbor Freight 230 volt spot weld, a spot welder, and this is the first time I used it. I adjusted it, and to me they came out really good. So got to use a couple pieces of equipment that I've had for a long time and never used. You can see the rust on it. What I plan on doing there, as soon as I get all the holes cut out on it, I'm going to go ahead and media blast this, and then I'm going to powder coat it. So, you know, it turned out pretty good. This one, this edge here is a little wavy. The more I used my air shears, the better I got. So in future projects, I shouldn't get those that so much waviness. But I think if I put this up at the top, it's going to look fine. Now, the next thing I've done, here it is, and I forgot to mark out. You can see those little dots there. I've used my laser cutter to design a template to mark where the holes for the tubes and stuff are. I'm going to go ahead and use one of these plugs. I got plenty of PC cords that I can use. So I'll use that. My initial plan was to use this awl here to mark those, and then I've got a snap thing here that I recently bought, an automatic center punch. I'm going to use that to mark those so they drill correctly. However, I made the holes a little bit too big, so it wasn't helping me center. What I did finally find is a fine Sharpie just fits in there perfect, so the holes line up. So the next thing I'm going to do is use my center punch on it, and I'll go ahead and use my center punch on it, and then I'll drill my holes. Then I've got some Greenlee chassis punches for the tubes. I'll use a step drill on these holes here, and then I haven't quite figured out what I'm going to do there. I can use my Dremel, or I might just go get my jigsaw and put a metal blade in it, drill a couple holes and cut it out that way. But we'll show you the results here in a little bit. Okay, since I hadn't ever used any Greenlee punches before, practiced on the throwaway chassis, for lack of a better term, used my Harbor Freight drill press for it. Just got this. It was on sale for 64 bucks. I've got a big shop one, but sometimes I don't like to run out to the shop to do it, so I thought I'd pick this up. I've been meaning to do that for a while. I went ahead and scored or drilled my first hole with a 1/8 inch drill bit. Then I used the larger drill bit that's slightly larger than that to score the hole to put that in. And then I put my Greenlee punch in there, and it worked like a charm. I went ahead and used some CRC cutting oil on it, and it made a nice little hole, very good hole. And tube socket's going to fit right in there. So since that was successful, I'm going to go ahead and put the 1/8 inch back in, drill all my holes on the actual chassis here, and like I said, I used the automatic punch on that. Seemed to work pretty good. One thing I went ahead and marked those using the marker. Punch fits right in there. I thought, well, maybe I don't need to do that, but to be honest with you, by having the hole marked, it makes it a lot easier for me to find the holes, even with the punch in there, because it's fairly small. So I'll continue to do that. That turned out to be actually okay. One thing I will say, make sure you got it in the right direction before you start marking and punching the holes, because the first time I wasn't thinking, and you can see where I had to wipe out the first marks I made. Flipped it around, got it right, and then went ahead and punched them. So hopefully next time you see this, all the holes will be drilled, and then I'll figure out how I'm going to do that. Okay, got my pilot holes and actual mounting holes. Drilled, so next we'll go ahead and drill out the right size hole for the greenly punch to go into, and then for these two holes up here we're going to use a step drill. Okay, got my step bit marked for 3/8 of an inch, and we're going to drill those two holes. Okay, those two turned out good, so next we move on to the greenly punches. Those three right there will be punched at 1 inch, and those two are 3/4. Okay, got the 3 1-inch holes punched, and I got the 2 3/4-inch holes punched. And everything lines up real good. So the next thing we're going to try to do is cut the square hole out. I don't have any punches for the square holes, so I think my first shot is going to be, or first try is going to be with the Dremel. Okay, I'm laser cutting the template for the control side, so here we go. The engraving part takes a little while. I engraved those numbers on there so I knew what size to make the holes. Now it's scoring, it's just scoring some holes, so just for reference. Now it's going to start cutting. Here it's cutting out the side of the board, or the actual template itself, the outside dimensions. Now it's going to cut some holes. That's it. So we'll just knock out the rest of the holes there, and now I've got my template. Okay, I've got those drilled out. I would rate this probably a C plus or a B minus. I need to figure out how to cut these without scoring over. Can do a very good job on the oblong there. These are okay. This one's kind of one of these. I think this one's a little bit high, so I need to step up my game on using the auto punch. But overall, for the first time, so far that's not too bad. Since I'm going to powder coat it, some of it will cover up. So, last part on the chassis before powder coating is drill for the transformers up here. So, we'll work on that and get that done here in a little bit. Okay, I've got everything cut out in the on the chassis of the 5E3 clone. It went from a C plus to a D, and that's because when I marked the template for the top, I wrote down what size the holes would be, and for some reason I wrote 1/2 inch on the transformer mount instead of a 1/4 inch, and I drilled this first one and immediately realized I screwed that up. So this is for my own personal use, so I'm not, I'm going to go ahead and use it, or just put a washer up in here to make that mount correctly. One thing I did learn is with the automatic center punch, I was having, I was kind of confused because it really wasn't centering it real well when I went to drill. Read up on it a little bit. All I needed to do, that was a simple fix, and I'm sure those of you out there with experience are laughing at me. But basically, rather than just hitting it once, I hit it 3 times, and then those centered real well. I still need to figure out a better way of cutting squares. The other thing that I will do when I do another one of these is, rather than trying to make this like that, I'm just gonna center a hole and work around that. One other thing that I forgot is one of the modifications. I'm going to do 3 mods on it, and one of them required another position for a switch, so I had to come back and drill that hole for a 3-position switch. So single throw, double pull switch. So I went back and made that, and I'm going to have to make this a little bit bigger because that goes where for the fuse, and I didn't make that the right size, but that's not a big deal. So this is it for this video. I'm going to go out and media blast it and powder coat it. Oh, the other thing, originally I was going to powder coat it and then drop it in my laser cutter and etch the labeling out. This is too high to go into my laser cutter, so I'll go back to using decals on this. Maybe in the future what I'll do is I'll make another plate that I can powder coat and lay in the laser cutter and etch out. But for this time we're just going to make some water slide decals and do it that way. So till next time, this is WD0DXD signing out.
That's all, folks. WD0DXD signing off.